Irene with SaugaTalks. Hello, everyone. I speak weekly with fascinating people in tech. And today I am so excited to be here with Lee Coulter. Lee, you are a CEO of transformAI, company that builds solution around automation, RPA, right? Can you talk a little bit about how did you get there? Why AI in your life? Why RPA?
So I guess, I'll synopsize kind of some of my earlier career, but I ran global IT for large organizations for almost 10 years. And I've been in this world of business process transformation on a mega scale for more than 20 years. So with a kind of an orientation toward paying attention to enabling technologies, I was in a unique position to make a set of decisions which allowed my organization at the time to become an early adopter of this thing nobody had ever heard of called RPA. And it's a transformational technology. And of course, now everything gets labeled with that particular moniker, which in my role as the chair of the IEEE working group chair on standards in intelligent process automation, I've done my very best to give everybody nomenclature that is more descriptive, but it seems that the popular media still likes to say everything is RPA. Well, it's not, so we'll start there. But what I began to see, Irene, was as the speed of maturation of new technologies, because we are sitting somewhere on the 6th and 7th wave of innovation as humankind. And in fact, they're both nearly vertical curves. If you were to look at them in a linear fashion, if you look at them in an exponential fashion, you can see why things are changing so rapidly. Here's a great case in point. These automation technologies, they were kind of born in 2002 to 5. They really just kind of struggled to get their feet under them. About 2012, all of a sudden, it's here. By 2015, Forbes and Fortune are publishing stuff about them. Gartner finally caught up, and the associated technological fields here, and this is really when we talk about Industry 5.0. It's really about convergence. So Industry 4.0, you can kind of think is, right, we had the Industrial Revolution, the Information Age, Computer Age, and now it's the age of automation, and then we'll have this age of convergence. Trying to separate 4 and 5 may be really difficult to do, unless you're sitting 30 years into the future looking at historical data. But as we sit here today, I use this example. At first, we had a telephone, and big companies could have a conference room with a telephone in it that had a dedicated phone number to another conference room in another location, right? And then, in the 80s, we got cell phones. I had my first cell phone in 1988, I think. And all of a sudden, mobility is transformed. And then, of course, we have the handheld device, and this is where convergence comes in. So doing what we're doing right here, right now, from my home office, from your home office, was technologically not possible to do without an enormous investment just 3 years ago. And now, I could literally be doing this by taping my phone to the wall, right? I mean, and the network bandwidth required and all of the associated technologies, the quality of the camera, the amount of memory in a device, so many different things. And that's just one piece of technology that's contributing to the changing world of workforce and workspace, or I'm sorry, workplace and workspace. And we'll come back to that in a second, Irene. Your question was where I was headed was, as we were looking at the early days of the automation technologies, it was really easy to see that every place that we needed to leave a piece of automation to go ask a human, what should we do, so that we can go back into the automation and keep going, and then go talk to a human. Some people call this human in the loop. Some people would call it exception management. Regardless of that, it didn't take a rocket scientist to be able to determine that it wouldn't be very long before machine learning models would put the machines in control of being able to make these decisions on what's the best path forward in a given workflow more reliably and with higher confidence and higher precision and accuracy than humans would be able to make them. And so you begin to take this core of task automation, which is software platform independent, and you now evolve from an unattended automation capability and you add attended automation, which does allow for human in the loop. Then you begin to add machine learning. And then, and again, these are recent developments. People don't realize how recent these developments are. The ability for me to select one of 8 or 9 different machine vision platforms. Now, these are platforms that their respective providers, the makers of these platforms, spent hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to develop. And we can rent them in the cloud. There's another cloud technology, right? It matured, and all of a sudden, everything's available as a service. So now I can take machine language, natural language processing, natural language generation, machine vision, and even it wouldn't surprise me if our talk right here was automatically subtitled for publishing in other language areas. So this has been very fascinating to me, and I've always had an eye toward the future. And so 2015, 16, I started talking to people about, wow, wait till you see what's coming. And I've been a member of Abundance 360. So if you're familiar with the Singularity University and Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil, your readers or your watchers can take a look at that later. But so I was really schooled, I've been a member for 4 or 5 years, and I was really schooled in how to listen for and watch for what was about to emerge through the maturation curve as a new disruptive technology. And so we're sitting here and poised at a point in time which is just unique in human history in terms of the speed of technological innovation. And so we have this, and again, I'm going to come back to this notion that Industry 5.0 is convergence, right? So I just gave this example of, well, we have big data, storage is virtually free, we have cloud computing platforms, and we can deliver highly sophisticated. So an instance of Watson, IBM Watson, costs $250 to $400 million if you want a copy of Watson, right? You can also rent Watson to do very specific things for 10 millionth of a penny per item, like per word or per pixel, or and so by itself, cloud technology, big data technology, telecommunications technology, all of those matured along their own line, and then they began to converge, and all of a sudden, I'm now able to automate using incredibly sophisticated tools and change the nature of the workplace, of the work going on in the workplace. And we'll come back to workplace and workspace in a minute, because the same disruption, the same source of disruptions and convergence is radically reshaping and putting a wedge between, well, it used to be, Irene, I'm going to take a step back. It used to be that workplace and workspace were one thing, right? Everybody got up, took a shower, got a car, got a bus, got a bicycle, and went to work. And there was your workplace and your workspace. And that pretty much defined the environment in which work occurred. Well, starting about 25 years ago, 25 to 40 years ago, those two things began to get peeled apart. And as I mentioned, when cell phones occurred, when they arrived on the scene, and you got to think that's over 30 years ago, dramatic disruption to the notion of workplace and workspace. All of a sudden, you can talk to me anywhere I am. Oh, now my workplace and my workspace are starting to get divided. Now I've got handheld devices. Now I've got free conference calling, free video calling. I've got the ubiquity of handheld devices with high quality cameras and microphones in them. And I have a telecommunications that's 4G, LTE, and 5G capable of supporting massive amounts of data flowing in two directions, which make it capable of supporting this kind of work that we're doing right here and now. So the things happening to the workplace and the workspace, we have this piece of automation coming in, which is massively disruptive. And then we have this notion of the separation of workplace and workspace. So we have new work to be done. And it now doesn't matter where I do it. And I have access to incredibly sophisticated AI capabilities that can be integrated in my automation, which is now available in the cloud, right? Even the automation platforms are now available in the cloud. So you use a browser to configure the automation. You're not like you don't install a piece of software. You just log into a web address.
I use the browser to record this very talk right now. This is fascinating new capabilities that we discover, new tools popping up here and there with virtual events, with all the communications that are readily available in HD. We're talking now.
Right.
Imagine that, HD recording in the comfort of our own home. Please get going. We started with processes, but we quickly got to 5.0. Right? What would it mean, this next level of automation?
And that's what I'm trying to make is that this convergence, when different technologies are all racing ahead on their own timeline and they bump into one another, that's when real disruption occurs. And that's what we're seeing right now. Now, not unlike almost every technology that man has ever developed, there are a bunch of unintended consequences which people aren't thinking about. We'll talk a little bit about this today, but I'm going to tell you that corporate culture is in a life-threatening crisis. And we'll talk more about how all of this throws corporate culture into the ditch, but it certainly can and will. And I was on a panel. Had to be 2-3 months ago now, and the question was asked. I know we're all trying to survive through this COVID thing and all the changes that have been wrought to business, and what's going to be the next thing that threatens the corporate world. And to a person, everybody agreed with my description of why culture is going to be the next crisis. Something that we don't pay that much attention to, and because it just occurs naturally, right? But remember, when the workplace and the workspace are together, then all of the people that are involved in that workplace and workspace get to observe one another. They get to provide feedback to one another. In a lot of cases, that feedback is nonverbal. It's a look across the table that says, "Don't say that." It's a kick under the table that says, "No, you can't possibly do that." It's the leader or leadership explaining company decisions. It's about leadership describing how the values of the organization drive the behavior of the organization. But that loop is broken, Irene. Right now, and let's just use some simple math here. We'll say that your intended and unintended turnover in your company is about 15%. Depending on what your industry is, it's probably somewhere between 11 and 19. So that says that in 3 years, half of your employees will be new, right? Just simple math. Mm-hmm. So that means that half of your employee base may never have met a coworker in person, may never have been to an office, and will have missed out on years of observational data that they would gather by virtue of being in this workspace. And if you look at the course of 8 hours or 10 hours or however long you're working, the number of opportunities that occur during that time period, all of which are supportive of values and culture, maybe 0.3% of them will occur. And that's only if people are really intentional. I was actually, a clip was shown of a leader in a conference call illustrating this very fact. And, there were 10 or 11 people on the video conference, and they had to get to an important decision. And so the leader took the time out to ask the group, what do you think that our value of innovation should, how should it impact our decision in this case? How should our value of transparency, or whatever the values were that he was espousing, what impact do they have on this conversation and the work that we're about to do and the decision we're about to make? And he got the group into a conversation about values and how they influence behavior. And that was an example of a very enlightened leader taking the time out to try to build a little bit of culture. Because if I go 5 years out, we might have as much as 70% of a business that has never been enculturated. They've never been a part of this workspace, workplace, unified place where culture is built. And I think it's only going to get more dramatic. If you're paying attention to the news, you see, and I encourage everybody to go look this up. Go look up the ANA X Prize. That's the All Nippon Airways X Prize. So their X Prize is full telepresence. So that is where you strap yourself into a thing in one place, your entire consciousness is projected to another place, and you have physical form in another place. And you may say, oh, that's nonsense, right? That will never happen. Well, I don't know if you've been following Boston Dynamics and their robots, but imagine just 12 months now that I can put my consciousness into one of those Boston Dynamics robots. And I can literally walk around a plant floor. I can show people how to do stuff. And I'm using an ultra low latency 5G network, right? With 10 millisecond response time across 2,000 miles. All of a sudden, I can literally sit in the conference room with you, and my little gestures will be repeated for people to observe. In fact, looking at that scenario, and the ANA X Prize, they are picking finalists like March, April. And it's just an example, Irene, of the speed of disruption and how quickly Industry 5.0 is coming to just blow it up.
So how do we live with all this? Because one thing to watch some exciting videos out there, those dancing robots. I mean, they just swept us all away, right?
Yeah.
But everyone sitting at home and thinking, aha, if robot can dance like me or better, right? Yep. Robot can work like me or better. So what do we do as humans? I mean, you brought corporates, corporations, you brought big companies, but at very individual level, right? Many people are really scared. Should they be?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say scared. If you're taking the time to experience some emotion about the disruption occurring to your chosen field of profession, whatever it might be, then you're enlightened to the point that you're paying attention to it, which means that you can do something about it. It's those who are head in the sand that are going to find themselves displaced. But I told, since my organizations have been the head of the disruption snake and the technology snake in the organizations I've worked in over the last 15 years, and people talk to me about the human toll. And I tell them, listen, get this disruption is a continual thing here, forever now, right? So you can either surf the wave or the wave can crash over you. But the wave of disruption is absolutely happening. And so I tell people, be really smart about what's being disrupted and the technology trends that are being used in your field of profession. So that you have an opportunity then to be in front of it and to be the most well-informed, to be chosen to be the one to implement, be a part of study teams and project teams and so on and so forth. Because it's the complexity and value of the work being done by machines today is, again, it's an exponential curve that's moving just so ridiculously fast. I was reading an article 2 months ago, and it was a retrospective on a farming family who farmed 100,000 acres with 6 people. And they set out to do this on purpose, right? So they designed this thing so that the equipment, fueled itself, operated itself, ordered its own maintenance parts, and they had everything that you could imagine in terms of automated fertilizing, automated watering, automated weed removal, literally trucks would come and trucks would leave, and there's nobody at the farm. The people running the farm are actually behind a keyboard in an operations center. And taking that as a radical disruption, if you look at the agrarian culture that we were just 100 years ago, and you now say 6 people are running a farm, well, it's going to be 0 people pretty quickly, because we'll close that loop, right? And that you can be in front of that wave and be part of the disruption that's coming to agriculture. Or you can wait for it to sweep over you. But one way or the other, that wave is coming. And I just use that as an example because there's a second generation of automated farming going on, which is carbon neutral, waste free, fully
sustainable, right? Sustainable, yes, for the planet. Yep.
And it requires no people. You don't need people to run this farm. So the article was about this new initiative around technology and agriculture, and then we're taking a kind of a retrospective over the last major effort and what they learned about running 100,000 acres with 6 people. And so if you're in finance and accounting, what's happening with automation in finance and accounting? Where is technology disrupting? If you're in audit and control, as an example, oh my gosh, AI is outstanding at finding outliers, right? Well,
faster, better, cleaner, right? And just more efficient.
Well, and it's 100% sample size, Irene. And this is the thing that, I predicted in 2014. I said, and I was actually talking to one of the big 4 audit firms. And I told them, I said, I'm going to be ready to give you 100% of my samples and be confident in my results before you're ready to take my samples and analyze them. And that's exactly what happened. If you go look at any of the audit firms today, there's no sampling going on. They just say, give me your whole ledger, all 10 million entries for the year, right? Or for the quarter. And I'm just going to analyze every single one. And I'm going to tell you all the places that I discover some risk. And so these are just a few examples of how this changed to what work are we doing. So communication, collaboration, all of the components of human presence in the workplace are where creativity. These are places where we're going to be spending more of our time as humans. I think LinkedIn, the last 2 years, has published the top skills for software engineers. And the top 3 skills are all non-technical.
Soft skills, right?
All
Those.
soft skills, right? So
Mhm.
yes, you need to know your technology, but you need to have those soft skills. And this is just kind of, that's a lagging indicator, which really illustrates this notion that the softer side of this is now where humans are going to be focused. And so we'll begin, well, I think we already are, we're isolating that work and trying to apply our people power to those things exclusively and apply as much technology power as we can to everything else.
Yeah, so from philosophical standpoint here, right, the way I look at it, it's not my opinion, it's yours, Lee, today, but if you can comment on people very much need it. People need it everywhere to bring this kind of talk, this kind of knowledge out there, to point out where the exceptional areas that need that attention,
Yeah.
this analysis. We can delegate to machine a lot of it, a lot of mundane analysis, a lot of statistical analysis, right? They can predict, they can direct us, but in a way, right, don't you think we're still a little bit superior as creatures?
Without question, we're superior to our technology. And if you're familiar with artificial general intelligence, or AGI, and the singularity, the point at which we no longer will be the ones building the next version of the machine, but only the machine is capable of doing that. It's not very far away. And whether you think it's 2050, which is 30 years away, or you think it's 2031, which is 10 years away, it's still not very far away. We're almost likely to see it in our lifetime, because for machines to get to the point where they're capable of assessing a need and then responding to it, we're not there. Now, will we be there? Yes. Will we be there faster than most people think? Yes. If you look at what Japan is doing with household robots for elder care.
Impressive, amazing, yep,
amazing,
really amazing
stuff that they're doing. And this is one of those things where there's an entire spectrum of needs that those seniors have, and the technology is capable of predicting likely what do they need in this given scenario. So there's, it's kind of trite, but it's very true. All of the things that make us human, our empathy, our sympathy, our ability to collaborate, these things machines don't have yet. And I say yet because there are quite a number of very intriguing experiments going on with machine empathy. So something you can type in and go on a rabbit hole chase to see what's new on machine empathy. But if you look at some of the stuff that the Chinese are doing, the sophistication of their microfacial detection, there's a really interesting story here. So, say what you will about their human rights stuff, but
and I will next time. Yes.
Yeah. So we'll just leave that alone. But what they did is they installed cameras in a classroom, and they did this, and the camera was focused on the children, and they were trying to create an objective scorecard for a teacher, right? So they recognize that good teaching and good instruction is really important. So they were looking at things like engagement and performance and all of these things that would be evidenced by microfacial or macro, body reactions to what's going on in the classroom. Well, what they discovered was that it was a 99.8% predictor of child abuse. So the reactions and the microfacial behavior of children that were in an abusive home stood out like a beacon, right? So here all of a sudden we've got a technology which is hoping to teach people how to be better teachers, or how students to be better students. And what they actually discover is that this technology has just taken the covers off of the ability to find abused children.
And you're finding something that you were not looking for. This is interesting, right? Signs of, some traits that are completely new. But again, going back to humans, it's not the data that we're getting, it's not the signals, it's what we do with it. Don't you think? Because every culture will answer differently. Okay, the child that is dreamy in school, okay, some say, oh, he's gonna be our next Mozart. I don't know, right? But in some other culture, they say, he's useless. He is not paying attention in class.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still very much ethical decisions, don't you think? So that's interesting part. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was heartening for me, as I was participating and have been participating in the industry groups that are wrestling with this. As I mentioned, I've been involved with standards in this area for 6 years. And when I begin to see the AI Alliance and ethics in AI taking top billing, and when I see product offerings around, testing ethical decision making with machine learning models, one of the companies I'm on the advisory board with, Cognitive Scale, they have actually one of their technology offerings is to test AI to see if it's in fact fair and unbiased. It actually will, without knowing what's in the box, it can detect the inputs and the outputs and get to a point of determining whether or not it's fair and unbiased machine learning models. And so what you do with technology, obviously guiding it to, I won't say altruistic or wonderful purposes, but at least keeping it out of the hands of the worst of the criminal element is certainly admirable. It will be a uniquely human thing that we do. If you look at the level of sophistication that went into the SolarWinds hack, incredibly sophisticated AI technologies embedded in the development of that massive hack. Well, those technologies are colorless and tasteless until somebody puts them in their hands and uses them for beneficial or nefarious purposes. And then and only then does technology develop a color.
Lee, this should be what the heading for our talk here. Technology only gets color when we put some sense into it, right? When we really spell out what it all means. Because again, technological advancement, amazing. We could never see, ahead our smartphones, like you mentioned. We could never see again this way of communicating and simply putting, our opinions out there. It's amazing.
Right.
It's amazing.
Who would think that our political discourse would occur in 140 characters at a time now?
Here we go. This is exciting. I am a humanist, though. Okay. I do see people behind everything and anything. And after more than 2 decades in technology, right, I still believe that, yes, humans are needed. They need it in different qualities.
Yeah. Have you met Gerd Lanhard?
Yes, of course. I mean, I'm following. I haven't met him, but I'm a huge fan. I watch everything he does. So he is this kind of thinker and philosopher in many ways.
And he's very much a humanist as well. He and I had a chance we'll just leave it with definitely more than one cocktail across the course of an evening. And it was fascinating for 3 or 4 hours to just unpack what's happening in his head. So for others that are humanists, I would offer to you that Gerd's stuff is a fantastic fountain to drink from. You may not like every drink, but there's a lot of really, really great stuff that really focuses on what is human, what will human be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Just as a personal share, I've talked to my wife about the advancement of medical technology, and I don't know, it was sometime around 2000. They said, the first 200-year-old was born, and I heard recently that the first 300-year-old has already been born. Somebody that's going to live to be 300. And there was actually a popular movie about something that is absolutely in our technological future, which is uploading people to the cloud before they die, so that you have a complete and accurate copy of that person in the cloud. Well, I can't think of the name of the movie offhand, but that so many books have been written about that notion, Irene, that it's people may hear this and say, this is just silly impossible. Well, the fact that we have all these different technologies converging at the same time, right? So if you look at our ability to operate at the tiniest, we're already operating, in individual neurons, right? And if you've been paying one of Musk's companies, the one for the brain, the brain-machine interface, I can't think of the name right offhand.
Neuralink.
Neuralink, thank you, yes. Again, put Neuralink on just a 3 to 5 year runway. And now, Bolt, what will be, instead of 5G, we'll be talking about 6G. And you'll have a Neuralink, which is connected to a Boston Dynamics robot in another location, and that's 3 to 5 years. So, what does that do for our work? You remember this notion of workplace, workspace. I've been pretty active in looking at holographic technologies, mixed reality.
Augmented reality, I'm sure, right?
Oh my goodness. Well, the thing that actually gave me goosebumps was when I got a chance to try on the Magic Leap glasses. It gave me goosebumps. It was so real. It was it was a character sitting in a chair at a table, and I could walk around it, interact with it, and I'm on a wireless thing with, and it's these HD glasses that weigh like, 2 ounces, and this little puck that you carry that has the computing guts and some battery in it. And imagine where the workplace becomes entirely virtual. And we can actually have a really rich human-to-human interaction. There have been a lot of science fiction authors that have taken us through this inflection point and taken us hundreds to thousands of years past this point. Robert Heinlein is a particular favorite of mine. So if you haven't read Robert Heinlein, he was a futurist of the 50s and 60s, and one of the best thinkers I think we've had in a long time. But anyway, I digress. There's no putting them back together. What there will be is creating an opportunity to build culture, creating an opportunity to bond and connect with people, and to have all of the richness of a person-to-person interaction without being physically present. And I'm without a doubt convinced. We're going to start to see it with holographic displays. So in the not too distant future, you're going to be able to have a holographic video call with somebody. This was a real eye opener for me. So I was on Home Advisor, and I see a new service. And it's to build your home office and VR room. So they now have a group of advisors that have produced a bunch of content, and they're also available for hire, so that as you are remodeling your house or purchasing your house, that you give thought to VR, AR, and the new way of working. So going ahead and installing cameras and wiring them into the room in advance, having a touchpad, having sensors around the room that can tell a system to flip your vision back to see-through before you trip over a chair or smack a wall with your hand. These things they Magic Leap you can buy today. You can buy a Spot Mini, that's Boston Dynamics dog robot. You can buy it right now today. It's 75 grand, right? You can buy it today. And so I guess I just, I'm preaching to the choir here with you, Irene, because you know so many people and so much about what's happening in technology. But it continues to amaze me that that there's so much of this which is on a predestined, like this is happening. Exactly how humanity is going to react to it and respond to it is TBD. And it's always good whenever we kind of talk about these things that are phantasmagorical, right? This is very real, but who was it that said any technology sufficiently advanced will appear as magic to those observing. And so for sure, we're entering this world where stuff is magical. But then I was reading about the satellite, the 3 different constellations of network providers that are going up in space. And I wasn't paying attention about that technology, although that's pretty amazing also, that space is now available to us on kind of a, just order and pay the bill sort of basis. But what was interesting is that the reality of the adoption curve is as old as humanity itself, right? So listening to these folks that live in rural anywhere, and their only choices for telecommunications in their home was DSL or satellite. And I've been on broadband for 20 years. I honestly, to go back to DSL, shoot me in the face. I don't know if I could do that, but that's very much a reality. So on the one hand, we're talking about all these things that are just going to, converge and totally disrupt and transform. But then there's this very real thing over here, which is availability, accessibility of the numerous converging technologies necessary to make some of these true leaps possible for more of humanity. And I think, I've seen several countries now declare that network is a civil right. And I saw a panel of psychiatrists that issued a joint letter to the world that basically said you need to include bandwidth as part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs in this world. And included in that was some very interesting stuff around here's a list of things that you cannot do any longer without a phone or a laptop or computer of some kind. And in the same way that there are no payphones, right? I can't tell you the last time I saw a payphone. How many libraries have computers available to how many people, and how many do they actually, serve? It has become, what do they call them? There's a term I'm missing here, Irene. The digital haves and have-nots.
Digital divide?
Digital divide,
yeah. I was about to bring it up, yeah.
The digital divide is going to exist for corporations and for people. Those that embrace and surf the wave, and those that the wave crashes over.
Exactly. So bandwidth becomes the very, primal need now, right? Talking about education, talking about medical services, more and more telemedicine, more and more accessibility, right, to basic resources. Okay, will be done through internet. So absolutely. And you know what we need for all this? We need people. We need people who will be installing this new equipment, people who will be maintaining, yes, with the help of robots. But all these solutions that your company is working on, right, other companies will be advancing. Okay, that doesn't happen, just by robots yet. So
absolutely. In this period of our evolution as a species, I guess. There are dystopians and utopians. I actually find myself to be a temporary dystopian and a long-term utopian in this respect. And the reason for that, Irene, is the speed. The speed with which this stuff is happening, and the fact that it's in every facet of our life. Everything. Many, I don't know what the number is, so I don't want to put a number out there, but let's just say that approaching half of the countries on Earth have already scheduled a date in the future at which they will stop printing money. So that has said that our economy, which used to be connected to literally a bar of gold sitting in a safe somewhere, is now just bits sitting in a computer. Every one of these facets is moving at its own space, at its own pace, and I don't see anything that's going to slow that down. But the human dynamic of I'm 65 and I'm not. I've been doing it this way for 35 years. I'm going to keep doing it that way. Those folks are. It's a very real thing. Or just people who are just uncomfortable with change. That it may not be anything specific, but just folks that like it the same tomorrow as it was yesterday. Those adoption curves will have a very interesting dynamic. But when you look at the arrival of self-driving, and when I say self-driving, that is airplanes, boats, automobiles, trucks, and trains. It's no secret that most humans are on airplanes just as a convenience to make people feel more secure. But in fact, the airplane pretty much flies itself. Most people aren't aware that there are a lot of ships on the sea today that are fully self-driving, with the exception of getting in and out of ports at either end, and even that'll be solved in the near term. And so, if you look at the number of people that will be disrupted by these that transport goods or people for a living, we'll call it 400 million people. In 30 years, that entire world will be massively disrupted. So before we can absorb all of those folks that are displaced, because we'd said before, if you remember, Irene, if you're watching this conversation, then you're already way ahead of the game, right? You're paying attention, you're trying to get smarter, trying to figure out what does this mean for me as a person? What does this mean for me in my profession, for my company, for my family? For the folks that haven't heard of anything that we've talked about, that wave will crash over them. And it will take society, we will implement and deploy social programs to try to care for these people. But the reality is to reskill, transskill, or upskill these folks is going to take longer than they will be matched with new jobs. So I think that there will be a temporary disruption in a number of fields that lasts 15 to 3 decades. I think it'll probably take us till 2050 to reabsorb those folks that are disrupted through what is going to happen in the next 10 to 15 years. But these timeframes are not that far away. So that's kind of my dystopian view. Is there's going to be a lot of folks disrupted. And did you happen to follow any of the
minimal wage. It's not wage. It's living. What is it? What is it? Right. Income. What is it? Income. Whatever. Right. It's income when society distributes. Right. The fixed amount to each member. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. All these discussions around it. Yeah.
There were 7 major experiments being done with.
Follow those. Yeah.
Yeah, and they all failed.
They all failed. People need motivation. Exactly, because the biggest conclusion from those studies is that we thought if we provide the minimum, right, to everyone, then to get extra, they would motivate themselves, right, and do something better, learning something new, right? No. So we're very interesting creatures, don't you think, people?
I do think.
Yeah.
And I think, Irene, that what's happening right now is putting humanity collectively and humanity individually, humans individually, in a set of circumstances and conditions that couldn't have been conceived of, and that will be arriving very, very quickly and force us to react.
Right. Where we are in this talk, though, I'm enjoying this tremendously, okay? We talked as humanists, we talked as technologists. We talked about futurism over there, right? What we cannot imagine will be coming much faster, right? Yeah. And again, my point and my message, and please, let's grow the audience for this, so more people hear, and maybe more people will get hope, and more people will find answers, because there will be need for all these folks who know how to talk about technology, who know how to write about technology, who know how to bring more people and train people in technology, don't you think?
I do think, and in fact, it was an interesting conversation from some years ago, and somebody was trying to figure out, like, what was my of all the tools in my tool belt as a leader, kind of what was my most powerful tool, and where we arrived was, I teach people how to adopt new ways of working with a major influx of technology and lead them through the change management. And you were talking about the human part of this. Well, there's no part of this that's going to work long term if humans can't make the change and behave differently, and think differently, emote differently. All of these things are going to require help and assistance from leadership. And I think I think it's why we're seeing soft skills being listed among the top skills for software engineers. Is they're increasingly finding that technology has reached a point where its level of complexity and sophistication are already beyond your typical user's capability to react to. And so you really need much greater interaction and collaboration to develop technologies that people can actually adopt and consume and use.
So those with facilitation skills, with moderation skills, okay? Think of all these talented individuals out there who don't think of themselves as technologists, but they can be invaluable because, again, so many people still outside of this closed circle. I'll give one example. I'm doing something with my business partners around virtual events. We're offering better than real life events. And we spoke with a graphical facilitator last week. Think about this profession. Graphical facilitator. Right? Look at that.
I had a graphical facilitator for 6 or 7 years in one business, and absolutely, like, highest recommendation possible. Conceptual and graphical facilitation is an awesome thing if you've never been a part of it. You may have seen some of the infographics that come from it, but yeah, fantastic way to facilitate.
Here is the example, right? What about all these dancers, musicians, poets, and philosophers? We need more of those because, frankly, right, our soul, our emotions need that engagement, right? We need that association with something bigger and better than what we do for a living, right? We concentrate too much on earning and spending. Where is this our higher matters? Lee, thank you so very much. Amazingly enriching conversation for me. Thank you. So let's spread the good word out there, and thank you.
Well, it was a lot of fun, and if you couldn't tell, I do have just a little bit of passion for this space. I spent a lot of my time reading about it, and I'm super excited. I can't wait to see what 2050 is like. I can't wait
Exactly.
to see.
Let's link to some good books here. Let's please bring on some links, some
Yeah.
resources, something enriching and educational for our audiences. Thank you, Lee. Thank you so very much.
Thanks, Ariane.